Ladies and gentlemen, all attendees around the globe, warmly welcome to this Wärtsilä webinar. My name is Kimmo Kohtamäki, and I'm Director of Four-Stroke Engine Portfolio in Wärtsilä Services, and I will be your moderator during this event. We look forward to providing you an outlook to the trends and relevant developments in marine market, as well as the strategies and solution for achieving growth and most efficiency through marine maintenance and the challenging environment. Today we have approximately 300 participants on the lines. The duration of this webinar is 1 hour plus then the questions and answer session. We will finish by 10:30 Central European Time. I hope this will be a productive session with good interaction. First, some practical information. The webinar will be recorded and available on the Wärtsilä website by Wednesday. And during the session, you are warmly welcome to send us questions and comments. Simply type in questions in the question field, which should be on the left side on your screen. You can also send the questions and comments throughout the session during the presentation, and no need to wait until the end. In addition, you can find our business white paper on optimizing marine maintenance by clicking the resource list icon below. Today we will discuss how the emerging opportunities and challenges challenging business environment of marine optimizing companies have affected their strategies for achieving growth and cost efficiency through the optimized maintenance. The strategies can be divided into two: a partnership-driven maintenance strategy and an approach that is more based on strong in-house competence. Depending on the strategy, different aspects should be considered. And when choosing the right solution, we hope to give you food for thought to support your considerations and the right options for your business needs. I'm also delighted that we will get some practical insights from our customer today. All in all, we have 4 speakers today, who I will introduce in more detail before each presentation. But let's have a look at the program of the webinar. Tuomas Hakala will give an overview of the challenges and emerging opportunities in the marine market and introduce us to the critical success factors for optimizing marine maintenance. Danny Shorten from Lloyd's Register will introduce us to survey procedures based on the machine condition data. Taki Klokkars will introduce us to the new means for planning and conducting maintenance and explain how to choose the right solution for guaranteeing uptime. And we are very happy to welcome also a customer of ours as a guest speaker. Miltos Tsisis from Gaslock will share the approach to optimizing marine maintenance. You are invited to participate in question and answer session by typing in the questions throughout the webinar. We have reserved 30 minutes for questions and answers. In regards to the topic of today, we asked you your opinion upon registration. Which of the following issues will have the most significant effect on your decision related to marine maintenance in the future? And your answers divided to 3 equal importance, and they were increasing need for reliable performance, growing focus on life cycle efficiency, and increasing need for cost predictability. And another question we had, how will your strategy for optimizing marine maintenance develop in the future? And there the absolute majority of the answers went to we will seek for flexible model that enables using in-house competencies and also external expertise when needed. Thank you for sharing your views. The speakers will pick up on these topics in their presentation. So with this introduction, let's move to the first presentation. I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, Tuomas Hakala, Vice President Solution Management in Services. He leads Wärtsilä Service Division's solution development globally. And in Wärtsilä, Tuomas is focused on innovation, service offering, and commercial development, also building a strong foundation on value creation and customer understanding. Today he will introduce us to challenges and emerging opportunities in the marine market and introduce us to the strategies for optimizing marine maintenance in a challenging environment. Tuomas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kimmo. Good morning also on behalf of myself. Yes, like mentioned, I'm going to start by setting off the stage for today. Starting from looking at the drivers around in the business, I think that pretty much a lot of these is nothing new to us, but still worthwhile to take a look at it. For sure, I mean, we look at the complexity and uncertainty in the markets. I mean, especially after 2008, 2009, I mean, these has been words that we have been hearing over and over again, and they are equally important today as they were then. This also then leading up to the second point where we say, you know, the need on the investments need to be made into the right spots. I mean, that's also shown by our and actually your poll results about what you see being important. I mean, of course it's on cost efficiency, and a non-negotiable is the regulations. Fuel economy, fuel prices. I think the past 12 months has definitely shown us that fuel prices also can take a roller coaster ride. Going forward, what is for sure is that it will continue to change, and fuel flexibility is becoming one of the key messages going out today. Then we have another thing which is probably one of the more newer things on the list of significant drivers in the market, where we talk about the digitalization, whether we want to use a vocabulary like digital disruption. It will change, but digitalization by itself won't do that much unless we are willing also to change the way we work in the digitalized world. The human aspects will still continue to be important. The key expertise still needs to be there. But let's then skim forward. Optimizing maintenance, yeah, a complex process, still very much doable. We all know that a big portion of the parameters we already set the day when we select our equipment, the day when we go for X, Y, or Z technologies, that's when we basically already set ourselves on a path which then drives some of the discussions we need to take further on. So looking at, shall we say then, the planning and so on, yes, we're going to come back to that one later on in my colleague's presentation. But absolutely, yes, I mean, we see CBM technologies, CBMs, I mean, this is a vocabulary which started out already 20 odd years ago, which today is just seeing a further evolution of it. Mentioned already about the information, the monitoring and the analysis being part of the digitalization of our businesses. But once again, I mean, digitalization is only going to change that much unless we don't change also the way we work, whether we change our processes or whether we, so to say, are just using a digitalization to create more information that we have more space where to store rather than actually making usage of it. Also with the digitalization, the analytics portion is still going to be a very, or is going to be even more of an important thing, whether then the analytics is done then by humans or whether it is by algorithms. But the data itself is of value when we analyze it when it's in motion rather than when we are looking at static data. This is then once again an example on where we also see that we do bring in the savings, and this points very much into one direction, that the decisions to be made is about where we can see that we can drive the revenue side by optimizing maintenance. If we see that, yes, we can bring in added value or additional savings in terms of fuel, we also see that we can do with a cost reduction in the maintenance itself, or whether then we say, yes, it also has an impact on the way we quantify the risk of operations. But I think the strong language here is that we do need to seek for opportunities where we can then drive by optimized maintenance the revenue potentials. Rather than banking on the uncertainties, let's then sell the capacity that we know that optimized maintenance will further bring us. So from maintenance to asset performance optimization. With asset performance optimization, we are looking at the whole spectrum of data being brought in order to generate the saving through that we are working and we are operating the installations optimally. It's an additional expertise that is brought into the engine rooms by then remote medias to help the crew in order to be able to run their engine room operations efficiently. Can be set up with various dashes, whether we're going to have a user interface dash on board and we're going to be able to then to bring in even more data ashore in order to be able to further analyze and bring back then the information of what really needs to be done in order to be able to operate the fleet in an optimum way. And also with this one, as going back to the last slide, we are also then looking at shall we say that how do this one then work for us in order to drive a top line growth rather than only to work on shaving on the cost side. In order to do this asset performance optimization in its totality, yes, it requires a few decisions to be made, and one of them is of course that we need to be in a single digital ecosystem. I mean, we need to be able to bring in the variables, whether these variables are then the engine maintenance, whether they are the weather conditions, the navigation, so whether they are in the trimming of your vessels and so on and so forth. But each and everything needs to be brought into one ecosystem in order for it to be utilized. Creating customer value through digitalized services. On the way to the desired productivity, yeah, I mean, we have a few non-negotiable things. Yeah, we do need to look at the safety. I mean, that's one of the absolute non-negotiable things, where we also see that a digitalized service is going to be able to bring further enhancement into this one. We talk about efficiency, predictability, reliability, and then at the end also then calculating out then to an availability of the fleet itself. And finally then when that can be banked upon, yes, there is the productivity increase that we were looking for. So which are then the key questions that we need to address to ourselves in this one? Do we or do you consider optimizing do you consider optimizing marine maintenance as a source of growth? Are you increasingly focusing on the core business? What is it that we want to spend our time on? The poll also shown pretty much that there is a humongous interest on the top line growth. There was also saying that, yeah, we also need to be able then to focus on what is our core business. We had also about important things when we said that, yes, we would like still to be able to utilize our own resources, and then we extend ourselves then into the utilizing of expertise in order then to bridge the technological gap or whether to do the input of the expertise that is needed for our personnel to provide the services that we expect them to do. What is the expected payback time on investments, and how important is predictability? I mean, we can always starve our bottom lines into shape. We all know that doesn't fly that long. And looking at it from our perspective, there is only that little we can do on that side. However, shall we say, if we then look at investments which are paying off in terms of either a top line growth or then a cost efficiencies. Of course, here, I mean, we as the rest of the industry, we have also realized that the required paybacks on any of these investments, this is not anymore in the 5, 7, 8 year horizons. I mean, we talk about a year and a half to max 3 year paybacks on investments that we do on modifications on existing fleets. We already addressed that what do we do in-house and what do we plan to outsource. Tage Klockars in his presentation is going to be coming back on this point. And what are the needs for updating and modernizing the fleets, that they're going to be up to date, up to spec on what is required of them operating in today's competing environment or competitive environment. And that concluded my portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for the very interesting presentation, and that will for sure wake up a lot of questions. Then the next is our first guest speaker, Danny Shorten from Lloyd's Register. And Danny has worked for over 30 years in the lubricants, condition monitoring, and ship classification industries. And he's currently practicing within the Marine Consultancy and Technical Directorate of Lloyd's Register in UK. His principal activities in promoting best practice and management of change, especially in relation to asset management, machinery health maintenance, and condition-based maintenance. He will give an overview of the survey procedures based on the machine condition data. Danny, stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Kimmo. I'm very much grateful to be asked to speak here in front of the outside audience and the people within the room today. My background is in maintenance management and condition monitoring, and what I want to do is talk about how modern classification is going to align more usefully, shall we say, with the ongoing improvement of strategy within this area. One of the things we'll start to hear about is the term asset management. Asset management within the marine industry is a relatively new term. However, you will have seen within power generation, within land-based industries and within the airline industries, the term asset management being used quite routinely. The route to cost optimization through asset management is predominantly a whole life costing exercise, where the design and build, operation and disposal need to be considered. And the way to do that very often is to understand how to best use the tools you have available. Within ISO 55000, which is a recently introduced standard, we see that strategy is controlled by the nature and purpose of the organisation, i.e. what are we setting out to do? What is the operating context? What are the financial constraints and what are the needs and expectations of the shareholders? Now, in terms of maintenance management, that really means starting to do things better tomorrow than you're doing today, because we need to identify the activities that all the maintenance activities produce in order to minimise unnecessary work and maximise the benefit of the work we carry out. Now, in terms of looking at the survey processes, in essence, the very basic process is an engine survey, where we perform a single survey over a 5-year period. This is relatively unknown in the industry now, and we tend to refer to a CSM approach, where we're actually continuously surveying machinery over the 5-year cycle, and that normally means 20% of the assets every year. Clearly, what conventional survey relates to is the need to physically inspect otherwise unknown areas, such as dismantling equipment. Now, in the maintenance and reliability world, dismantling anything unnecessarily is really not seen as best practice anymore. So what we're looking to And with the developments of some of the OEMs and some of the developments of some of the standards, we're looking to actually extend our intelligence beyond dismantling into bringing data out. To support that, the class societies, and I work for Lloyd's Register, have all effectively addressed this by looking at planned maintenance systems to control the way that maintenance activities are planned, and also to look at the condition of assets via extraction of data that one can then make useful guidance on. And in very simple terms, the MPMS approach allows the chief engineer to credit an item for survey, having ensured that the maintenance which was planned to be carried out has been carried out. And that credit can be confirmed during the annual survey by the attending Lloyd's Register surveyor. What the MCM notation does, which is the second tier, is allow the chief engineer to make that credit based upon condition monitoring data. Therefore, where no planned maintenance or invasive maintenance was required, that credit can be surveyed again by the chief engineer for support by the attending surveyor at the annual survey. Now, moving forward, because these are effectively activities which are all based upon a calendar planning system, such as a planned maintenance system, the goal is to do as little maintenance as is necessary to achieve the required safety, reliability, compliance, and whatever other risk factors you're managing. However, to use a calendar to drive it is probably, well, it's been proven to be less than ideal in terms of the asset in question. It's a very useful tool for smoothing work out, but it's not a very good tool for assessing the need for maintenance. So what we're doing, in line with a lot of manufacturers, is looking at driving the maintenance activity by the condition of the asset themselves. So we've devised a system called MCBM, which is condition-based maintenance, currently of which we have no takers for, because the industry is still trying to achieve that. So we set a higher standard in order to try and create a vacuum for the companies to move into. And what these schemes are intended to do is increase the efficiency of operation by creating some harmony between these activities. One of the things which is very critical is for the owner and the OEM and the class society to have a discussion together in order to ensure that the optimal processes are being maintained. Now, if we look at the slide which is on the screen at the moment, this will basically illustrate the differences between the four effective processes. Now, in terms of engine survey and CSM, the chief engineer can't offer any credit for survey whatsoever unless he's looking at being accredited for survey in a port which is normally not available to a Lloyd's Register surveyor. So that's fairly unusual. Where we look at MPMS, which is a planned maintenance system, then yes, the chief engineer can credit certain items for survey. So that negates the need to draw in a surveyor at all times. With using the planned maintenance system as a baseline, machine condition monitoring, which is MCM, allows the chief engineer to credit on CM data, and also allows them to defer maintenance, assuming that that's in line with the OEM's instructions. So there is a duality using conditional data, not only to empower the chief engineer, but to also to extend intervals based on the condition of the plant. Adding that to MCBM, which is the highest level achievable, we not only can do those things, but we can also remove the due dates for maintenance in terms of what's required for survey. So we don't have a 5-year cycle anymore, we simply maintain going forward. That is very attractive for a number of reasons. Not only that, you are actually maintaining condition more frequently using less invasive technologies, so it's a much stronger argument. Now, if we look at life cycle costing, for instance, we can see that there is a huge cost, obviously, in specifying, designing and building, and then there are on costs throughout the life through to disposal. There are also costs at 5-year intervals where dockings are normally required. Now, if we look at designing maintainability in, then we can reduce the cost in service, and we can also reduce the cost of disposal. But we do tend to increase the cost of build, although this is a discussion which is open to interpretation depending on who you talk to. If you survey plan align that with extended maintenance, then not only do the costs reduce, but you also have the ability to extend docking intervals. Currently, this isn't a recognised and formal process, but we do take discussions with all manufacturers on a case-by-case basis. So this is something which we're moving towards. Now, in terms of the current market for class-approved condition monitoring services, we've seen the MPMS situation for planned maintenance pretty much grow year on year for the last 20 years as new builds come on board. Not only because we have within ISM a requirement to look at maintenance management processes to establish risks, etc., as in ISM 10.3, but we also realise that the amount of maintenance activities is something that has to be planned in a controlled way, and computer-based systems tend to proliferate. So if one assumes that 100% of the ships out there have some kind of planned maintenance system, one has to ask the question why only 10% of those choose to align that with classification. And this is the same for all class societies. So 10% of ships have a MPMS notation allowing the chief engineer to credit certain items. By differentiation, 90% of those ships do not. So chief engineers are having to draw surveyors in when potentially unnecessarily. Why has this not been more? Well, potentially there's been some poor awareness, lack of engagement. Certainly the proliferation of the internet and the ability for us to draw information from the ships more easily and less costly is showing that, showing some change. But more interestingly, when we look at the second tier notation, the condition monitoring notation, we see that of those 10% of the fleet, because we need to have MPMS to allow MCM, only 10% of those vessels, 10 to 20%. So in essence, 2% of the world's fleet are actually actively engaged in condition monitoring. Well, we know that's not true because of the figures we've seen about who's doing what in the market. So I believe that the class societies have got a lot more to do in order to actually align with that process and to make it easier to come into that. And also perhaps add some value during the annual survey to help companies manage their activities through life. Now we see that there is a change here. There is a likely upturn, not only because of the internet capability, the proliferation of sensors, the change in the way that we man and manage our ships. So I think we're potentially on the verge of a new phase of engineering. Not least now because the fuel price is not so much in focus, so we are looking at OPEX more wisely. So the only constant going forward is change. We have much more complex equipment. We want to extend our overhaul periods. We are seeing the OEMs, of which we are with one today, moving from a simple supply to a service-based role within the market. Increasing regulations, more paperwork. We have better internet and better machine communications. And we are moving companies from a traditional problem-solving role, from traditional engineering to an optimization role, where most of our engineers' time is spent making things better for the future as opposed to repairing them today. And operating expenditure is really now a differentiator. So what about the future? We talk about big data. There is more data flowing around our ships now than we've ever had before, and yet we're not really in a position to look at it. So I think there will be a lot of algorithm-based activity to try and find the relationships in that data. They will then need to be looked at by expert people in order to make decisions which actually really affect the operation of those vessels. But I personally think there's a lot of good stuff held within that information, which we need to extract and we need to make better use of. So now Lloyd's Register, through our foundation, have recently put forward a £10 million bursary into the Turin Institute for the development of data-led enhancements. So our organisation is very much behind this. And within Lloyd's Register of Shipping's marine business, we're seeing that the future of marine surveying will be data-led at some level. We will always need the expertise, of course, but we want to optimise that further by working with companies who can see the benefit of aligning their OEMs with their class society in a triangular relationship, so that we can essentially make a better future for our industry. It will only increase trade, so we need to be better at it, and we need to be more useful. At the end, this is my finished presentation. I thank you for your time, and I'll hand you back to Kimmo. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. And I'm sure also this presentation will create questions, and I hope that it will do so. But also I want to remind you in this point that about those questions. Throughout the webinar, you can type in your question in a question field on the left side of your screen, and we will then pick them up in by the end to the question and answer sessions by the end of this webinar. And then our next presenter, he is Tage Klokkars, Director Support and Development of Marine Agreements in Wärtsilä Services. Tage has extensive experience improving shipping efficiency and optimizing ships operation, auxiliary system operation and influence, as well as maintenance management with condition monitoring systems and dynamic maintenance scheduling. Tage will talk about the new means for planning and conducting maintenance to improve life cycle efficiency and guaranteed uptime. The floor is yours, Tage.
Thank you, Kimmo. Life cycle efficiency, we talk a lot about assets and optimizations and performance. A few things about how do we get there. What we have been doing a lot is looking into matching the maintenance with the customer's operation, meaning that we go into performance monitoring, condition optimization, and all these things, and all this tube leading to what we try to do is optimize the customer's business. It has to do with focusing on certain type of operation of the vessels. If we say like you have a route match maintenance or charter match maintenance, what does that mean? It means that we really go in deep with the customer. We do scenario workshops and we align our maintenance, our so-called performance monitoring systems to improve his business. And as Thomas mentioned here earlier, when we talk about the earning power of our customer, what can we do with the maintenance to go there? To increase the availability of a ship, equipment, or whatever is needed for our customers to increase their earning power. The new maintenance types, which Danny also talked about here, we're going into condition monitoring, condition-based maintenance, means that we get flexibility in the maintenance. It doesn't mean that we go at that date, at that time we do this. It means that we get more flexibility so we can match the ship's maintenance activities to the business our customer has to run. So that is more or less the, how shall I say, the new message. So we are taking one step forward from providing the maintenance to optimizing the maintenance. Few things about the cornerstones about condition monitoring. Looking a little bit condition monitoring, condition-based maintenance, it's all about keeping an asset in ideal running condition. That means that we get ideal running condition means that things last longer. And also with condition we can predict, and we can predict the future of equipment. And this together then also detecting failures. We have other things like flexibility gets more larger, and all this together then brings us down to what we call asset optimization. Few words about the building blocks. What is the benefit with these things? Prediction, as we saw also, there was a questionnaire here in the beginning. Reliability was a big word. And here we then can link directly when you do prediction of condition, you also do how reliability is involved in this and how reliability the equipment is. Then also operational decisions aligned to the actual condition of the equipment. That means that can we run another year or should we stop now? So we can very easily make decisions when should we do this and when is the best time to do it according to the ship's schedules. Then a few words, right and reliable OEM spare parts, easy to order and available wherever, whenever needed. We do a lot of maintenance planning and planning ahead, and this is quite a key in today's business. One thing what we used to say is that what you don't have, you need to get, and how to get it fast means that by this planning, we already plan ahead 6 months up to 1 year, where we have these types of OEM parts that is needed. And easy to order, I will come back to that later. We have some new concepts that will help our customers quite largely in his planning of his business. Some things about, we have class-approved concepts when we do condition monitoring systems, both in propulsion and the engine side, and it's increasing every day. We get new equipment to monitor. And also we do what we call a basic maintenance plan that will what we say, improve the length of times between overhaul. Going forward, how do we do this then? A little bit into depth. We have a lot of equipment, engines, gearboxes, propellers, thrusters, hydraulic equipment, gas packs, whatever is there. And what we do then is we take some data from this, transfer to our condition monitoring centers. It's all about vibrations, it's running data. And these have experts which then are analyzing this, and they do a prediction about corrective and predictive maintenance that is needed. And also we have set targets that for this equipment we see that we can go further and further. We often extend 6,000 hours of an equipment, and this is very interesting for our customers also. Near future we will have more in the engine room and more on the bridge and in the customer's office. That means that we focus a lot on efficiency, but also in the engine room the people operating our equipment will get more actual data to look and more advices on spot. Few words about spare parts. It's going from itemized picking to sets and packages. What does that mean? It means that conducting a maintenance of a component or an engine or whatever you have, a thruster, it means that you can now, with one number, you can buy a set which completes all the parts needed for that product. But then going further to packages means that you can, with one number, order the parts and the personnel and the workshop work that's needed for that equipment. And this helps a lot in the new ordering type. Instead of picking part by part, trying to identify these things, we are going further to sets and packages. Few things about the future. We have been looking a lot in this in remote operation lately. Power plants, we are already doing it. So why not on marine? So what we have is we have status monitoring virtual operation. We have also some actual project we are working on with this. So we do operation, maintenance planning, routing, logistics, getting parts in and out. And when needed, on port, somebody is boarding, and we do the maintenance en route, and when back in the next port, we depart the people. So I think this is more or less the future. And the monitoring and virtual operation is done by the owner of the ship in his offices or office premises. So this we see really will be a future. Great deal ferries and en route ships who do the same route all the time. Equipment and things can be monitored, are more reliable, so we get more reliability into the system. What has happened in Wärtsilä a little bit? Looking at condition-based maintenance, we have around 700 installations today connected. We are doing on propulsion condition monitoring. We have around, I think, 35 installations today, but it's also increasing. Remote online services, that is also new equipment, electronically controlled engines. We are doing remote online services, meaning that we can help and the customers in any situation wherever in the world. And this is also increasing. So the trend is really that when internet came more available in let's say 2005 to 2009, it starts to be more available on ships. There comes new services into picture. That means we don't need to send people across the world. So we can go online and help the people on board immediately, meaning that's only hours to the service. Then the base for all this is, of course, we have a great network, around 70 countries, 160 locations, a lot of workshops and a lot of professionals. And the trend is also that increasing, how shall I say, support systems for online is being built as we speak today also with remote centers and what we call it, and it's an increasing base. And then not to mention we have our Kampen warehouse. It's enormous. We have around 180,000 different parts there, and we have a great logistics work. And this is really the base why we can do these things. And as an OEM and designer, it's quite easy for us to get into these systems. Thank you. That was all from me. I'll leave the floor back to Kimmo.
Thank you, Take, sharing the view of the future. Now we will hear from our customer, Milton Chisis, a fleet manager from Gaslog LNG Services. Milton has an 18-year-long and versatile career in Gaslog services. His career started as a mariner, a third engineer, and has progressed through a number of different positions to being a fleet manager since 2011. Today he will introduce us to their approach and share their experience and practices in optimizing maintenance. Milton, a warm welcome.
Thank you, Kimmo. So I'm going to give you some feedback from the operator point of view. And actually, I was happy to hear that the Wärtsilä development plans are in line with our needs. In my agenda, we will have a short introduction of Gaslog LNG services. Then I'm going to explain what is our expectations from Wärtsilä and to share with you some of the best practices we follow. Gaslog LNG Services is a part of Gaslog Logistics, which is based in Monaco. The LNG services is based in Piraeus. We do the technical management and crewing of our fleet. So our fleet is, at this moment, we have 22 vessels, 8 of them steam, and we have 14 DFDE LNG carriers. We have also a quite big new building program. We are involved with new building plan approval and construction since 2002. Currently, we have 8 vessels in order, in construction actually. 4 of them are equipped with the same technology, 50 DF engines, and we have 4 vessels with low-pressure 2-stroke engines, the 4 XDF, and of course they are equipped with 34 DF as gensets. I would like also to say that the safety is really very important for us, and we are very proud of this. For our records there, we had 13 million working hours without an LTI, and, which, as I said, make us really proud. In the diagram, you can see how the company is growing in the last years, and you can see that in 2017 we expect to have more of 30 vessels in our fleet. Our expectations, our maintenance, part of maintenance strategy of our company is to work together with major equipment manufacturers in order to get the best of their services. So Wärtsilä is one of them, as you can understand. So what do we expect from them? We expect to be partners. We expect to understand our needs, to understand how important is the safety of operations, to work together with us for a cost-efficient and time-effective maintenance, to reduce downtime, no surprises, no failures, to extend as possible the time between overhauls, to improve performance and efficiency of engines and related equipments, to have a continuous and remote support when that is applicable, to increase reliability and to increase the flexibility on the maintenance. And something that is really important these days in the industry is to guarantee availability of competent resources to do the maintenance in both automation and mechanical part. Now we are moving to some of the best practices we follow. So since the first vessel that was delivered to our fleet, the DFD, in 2010, we have been in contact with Wärtsilä, and we had the technical agreement with them. The technical agreement includes condition-based maintenance, monitoring of engines and monthly reports, technical support, contract management, and regular meetings. Recently, and in the new generation of our DFDs, we had developed a more advanced agreement with Wärtsilä. We call this maintenance agreement or M agreement, which, in addition of what it was mentioned before, that provides remote online technical support, financial predictability, and availability of parts and engineers. I'm going in the next slides to give some more details about these two agreements. So, condition-based maintenance is part of the technical agreement and includes Wärtsilä engineer visits on each vessel once per year to assess the condition of main engine and their components. Based on that assessment, we plan the maintenance and we don't follow the fixed maintenance schedule. So we decide based on the condition of the engine and the components how to proceed with the maintenance. By that case, we reduce the risk of having sudden failures, and also we extend to what is possible the time between the overhauls. We keep the vessel more in service. Part of the technical agreement is also the monitoring and monthly reports. We have installed on our vessel a server and a software which gives set data daily to Wärtsilä here in Finland. And people here, specialists, analyze this data and produce monthly reports which give us the advices and explain the condition of the engine at any time. So this is an example of this report. You can see it is very easy to read. They use the traffic light system. So green means the condition of the engine is good. If we had an alarm or something that need to be paid attention, that would appear as yellow. And if we had a critical case, a failure, that would be red. There are details also in this report to give us instructions where exactly we have to look. And also sometimes they give also operational guidances. In the same agreement, the technical agreement, we have also the technical support. That means that Wärtsilä provides troubleshooting, monitors the engines, the parameters, and produce threads to show if something is going to fail or we're okay, and also give us advices and training to our crew when that is considered necessary. We have the contract management, which means that we have a dedicated person in Greece that coordinates the maintenance globally. We do maintenance effectively en route. We have done this a couple of times in the past with quite big success, without interruption of vessels' operation. And also the contract manager is responsible to find the parts and the people to perform this maintenance. Of course, all of this, in order all this to be succeed, we need a good planning. And the good planning is done through regular meetings we have with Wärtsilä in our premises where we discuss the maintenance plan. Except the technical agreement, as I mentioned before, we have also the maintenance agreement. The maintenance agreement provides, in addition, remote online technical support, which means that at any time, 24/7, a Wärtsilä engineer can give us or to our crew on board the vessel instructions via phone or via email of how to resolve an issue and to continue the safe operation. You understand that this shortens the time to solve technical issues and reduce also troubleshooting and other visits on board the vessels. We have very good financial predictability since it is well known the cost for the next 5 years for the maintenance of all of engines are installed on board our vessels. And we can have also a fixed monthly fee for that. And we made Wärtsilä to share the responsibility with us of the parts that need to be supplied, and also to guarantee that always specialists will be available to do the performance on the engines on our fleet. Some other practices we follow, we do extensive commissioning. That means that after vessel's delivery, we have arranged together, of course, with our partners to send a specialist on board the vessel during the first loading, because we have seen in the past some issues with the gas quality, the gas burning in engines, since the conditions, the quality of the gas during testing of the engines is not the same as the actual during the loading. And finally, together with all of major equipment manufacturers, we have identified the critical parts that should be on board the vessel at any time. So in case of any failure, to minimize the risk of having the vessel out or the equipment out of operation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Miltos, for the presentation. Now let's move to the questions and answer part. You are welcome to send your questions and comments online. The question and answer session will last maximum of half an hour. And gentlemen, welcome to the stage. All right. Good to have you all here. I think the first questions goes to Thomas. How do we see that digitalization has lowered the entry barriers to the market for providers?
Well, historically, if you look at maintenance providers, I mean, it has been hands-on, it has been heavy machinery, heavy equipment, and it has been a global footprint to deal with, as the ships call the harbors. Today, what we see is that as data is being analyzed, data is being collected. In the last 2 years, we have produced and stored about 90% of the world's all data. So there is not a lack of data. It's a lack of how do we analyze it. And the fact that we can transfer it means also that we can deal with more, shall we say, centralized single locations. Also the fact that you don't invest in heavy machinery and so on, but actually there is value being brought into data analytics and being the one who can, so to say, provide the guidance on what needs to be done. This is also then bringing in, shall we say, similar kind of expertise that we have seen in other industries in the past, whether then this has been in the automotive or the airline industry.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I think the next one goes for Tage. What are the relations between customer, classification society and Wärtsilä related to maintenance intervals?
Yes, here we come to Danny's famous triangle. It's actually a relation from the customer or the owner of the ship, and they have a relation with the classification society. Going into these condition-based maintenance systems, there need to be a cooperation with the OEM, the customer, and the classification. So we, Wärtsilä, supports the customers with the documentation for condition-based maintenance. They make the strategy with the classification to go for this. Does that clarify?
Yes, thank you. And I think it's good to then to jump to Danny, and I think this is for you. How will modern maintenance management approaches be able to bring benefit to the emerging and ship recycling industry?
Well, I think we are seeing much of a change from cradle to grave to a cradle to cradle environment within the shipping industry as we realise that the assets have value even at end of life, and therefore if we can sustain value to disposal, then we can increase the value of those assets and maybe either reuse them or reorientate them accordingly, so they will have end of life value should be more useful.
Thank you, and I believe the next question, good to continue from there. What do you think is the biggest obstacle to take up the condition monitoring and condition-based maintenance in the marine industry?
Well, I think traditionally we've been sort of stifled by some of the idiosyncrasies of the marine industry, such as that it's a very conservative market. We do have regulations which introduced a lot of redundancy of plant, and we've traditionally looked to activities which give us a relatively quick return on investment, whereas a condition-based maintenance strategy is a lifetime strategy. It's very much looking at whole life cost of that asset. Now, whether that life is from the initial design to literally disposal, or whether it's just a 5-year ownership, that life costing is much more relevant to condition-based maintenance. And as you were saying earlier, the amount of data we have available now, albeit we're still learning how to deal with that data, that should be able to target our activities much more usefully over that life, and therefore make the cost of ownership more useful.
Thank you. Next question, I believe, goes to Miltos. How Wärtsilä engineers assess engine condition during their annual visits?
So what they do is they do actual physical inspection, so overhaul of one cylinder per engine, and based on historical data they keep, and with discussion with our chief engineer, they decide if the scheduled maintenance can be postponed or maybe to bring this earlier. So the answer is they do physical inspections and they keep also historical data. Yeah. So combination of these two.
And then you can even continue then with the next question. Can you provide some examples where the online monitoring was used and helped the crew to solve the problems?
Yes, I have in mind the most severe case for us was a vessel that was instructed to go to West Africa for loading and to burn gas during loading. It was quite a new vessel. When the vessel arrived there and the engineer tried to put the engine in gas mode, that was impossible. So a guy from Finland connected with the vessel, went through the parameters, and he mentioned just a very small thing, a small parameter that was wrongly set there. So called chief engineer, asked him to change that one, and then everything was normal.
Okay, good, thank you. And then we have a very interesting question. about if the underwater survey is carried out on a vessel after 2 to 3 years after previous dry docking. Can the dry docking of vessel be extended to 5 years with a good hull and paints available in the market? And I guess it's Danny who can take this one.
I think with any unusual situation like that, we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. At the moment, the normal interval is 5 years for, certainly from a class major survey requirement. However, we are very, very open to discussing technical arrangements, and if the engineering analysis is sufficiently robust, then that conversation may yield a very positive outcome in terms of that. But to make a blanket statement would be quite remiss, because obviously case by case is how it has to be applied.
Yeah, thank you. Then for the next question, how many people in Wärtsilä is working in the development of intelligent CBM services, and how many people work within the remote service centers? Maybe Thomas can answer this one.
Yeah, let's start from the second one. Today, I mean, in the remote CBM centers, it's a figure which is slightly north of 25 people on purely then on the CBM side. Then if you then add to that one, then the area support centers that we have for operational help, like the ones that is being provided to Gaslog, I mean, you take that number and you take it times 3 approximately. On the development side, I hope to say that the figure I give now, that tomorrow it's wrong. Today, CBM is part of what we call the asset performance optimizations. And the team today is about 25. By the end of the year, we hope that it's going to be up in about 50, and in a fairly give it about 18 months, it should be north of 70 people. And like I said, I hope that my figures are wrong already tomorrow.
Thanks, Thomas. And then for the next question, is the analytics of the data done mostly automated, or is it with algorithms or people itself? Can maybe Target take this one?
Yeah, the analysis is 2 ways. We get data in, and mainly it's done by having a baseline that we compare the incoming data to, and that is giving us the indication where it's going. But also we have people looking at the data, and they are doing further mining of the data before they send any recommendations or do it. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then very interesting question. More flexible maintenance plans requires or demands flexible organization structures, assistance and expertise available when and where needed. What are the major challenges implementing organizational challenges in responding to the new trends? Anybody picking up to this question?
Well, I can jump in before my colleagues possibly, and just make one of my roles within Lloyd's Register is to talk to companies about strategic alliance with maintenance and class. Yeah. And what seems to be an overriding situation is that very often companies don't actually have a maintenance policy, i.e. what is their headline policy, which normally should be derived from their business policy. So how do we do our maintenance to achieve our business goals? And from that, one would look to develop a strategy, and from that strategy work would come. So I think if any company wishes to move down this route, the first thing they should be considering is what is our headline policy and how does it align with our business goals. And by suggesting potentially looking at risk, safety, compliance, environment and other business drivers, because each company will have different business drivers. And if they use those to derive the appropriate maintenance policy, then an appropriate strategy and work plans will fall from that. One can't drive it backwards, so one has to have a policy to start with so the whole business can be focused in the same direction.
All right. If somebody wants to add on something on that one?
For me, I think this is what we did with Wärtsilä. We sit down together, we develop an agreement in order to ensure that the competent person will be always available, and of course the necessary parts. And we found Wärtsilä quite open and flexible during the discussions of that agreement.
Thank you. For both?
Yeah, well, I could add on here as well. I mean, you know, I have to underwrite what you just said. It's absolutely true. I mean, that we need to have, shall we say, the foundational plans to deal with the bulk of it. Then also when we look at the new technologies, it's not always a question about how do we bring the engineers to the engine rooms. It's about how do we bring the reality of the engine rooms to the engineers. I mean, it's how can we utilize, shall we say, then the more modernized communication methods. I mean, that we actually can have two-way data communications with the ships. That more and more of the analysis and the troubleshooting could be done then remotely, and then also that even with a two-way communication that certain types of adjustments and checks and so on could be then done also remotely.
Yeah, thank you for all three of you. And then for the next questions, can the remote monitoring system be integrated within the existing machineries on board? Maybe
I can answer that.
Tage takes that one.
Yes, I have to say yes. Remote monitoring can be integrated with a lot of equipment. Anything that has a so-called sensor on it or measuring something, we can very easily integrate. And normally all this is already in the ship's automation system. It's just to tag the data from there and make it in a format that is usable for doing what we call the condition monitoring systems.
Yeah. Thank you, Take. Then we have very active audience. Thank you for that. Next question is Wärtsilä is very known leader in CBM area. Two must discuss about one digital platform needed. Question is that, is there any plans to share existing data out from fixed environment to globally open platform, for example, a cloud?
That was a very specific question.
Yeah, and it was for you.
Yeah, in order to be able to capitalize on every, I mean, we can't have a ship where we have 7, 8, 9, 10 various systems. I mean, we need to come to terms on agreeing upon which is the platforms where things have been done. I mean, not to make any comparisons to the handheld device you have there, but I mean, that one is basically globally working on 3 different platforms only. I mean, you have the EOS or an Android and a Microsoft one, and of course, I mean, through time will crystallize out the winners in that one. But for sure, if we're going to be able to utilize all the various inputs in order to be able to optimize it, you know, it needs to be, shall we say, on one place, and it needs to be then also in a readable form, like Tage mentioned. Then whether then it is stored on a cloud or a server, then is a secondary question. Then.
Okay, and then we have still one question here. Do all IACS members follow this CBM system?
I think in general most of the class societies have a general overview which is aligned under IACS. Clearly we all have slightly different ways of putting it into practice, and this I know can be a frustration, but I would say do not hesitate to talk about multi-fleet access. Most of the larger fleets tend not to have a single class society, so there is alignment requirements between the two, and those things really do need to be discussed sort of openly with the relevant stakeholders. More and more, I think we're becoming more aligned in terms of the rule recognition, but we are separate entities and we have different cultures and different way of working, and I think that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because it can actually increase the robust nature of the overall classification relationship with the client. So I try to see it as an opportunity for improvement necessarily, as opposed to a barrier to should we say, common sense.
All right, thank you, Danny. I believe we don't have any more questions, and from audience, so it's a good time to wrap up. And I would like to thank you, all the speakers, of course, and for their contribution, and all the participants sending very actively the questions. And after the webinar, you will find a recording on our website, www.wärtsilä.com, and then it's just time to say thank you and very much and goodbye.